Plow and Pencil, the art of American agriculture, where, like Ike, we recognize that farming looks mighty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles from the cornfield. The Plow and Pencil podcast will paint a picture of American agriculture today. We will tell the stories of the producers, the products, the policies, and the platforms that provide feed and fuel to our nation and our world. Join the movement of farmers, ranchers, and agriculture advocates plowing new ground, and pencil us into your weekly podcast schedule. This podcast is brought to you by Hitchpin.com, the tool thousands of farmers and ranchers are using to buy, sell, hire, and work in agriculture.
Hello, Hitchpin community. Welcome back to Plow and Pencil, the art of American agriculture. I'm your host, Emily Fink, and today I am honored to have Andy Caygeon Junkin, founder of Agriculture Strategy, which was incorporated in 2010 in Ontario, became an Iowa LLC in 2019, and was rebranded to Stubborn.farm in January of 2022 to better reflect what they are in the business of doing, developing better ways to solve the root issues that plague family farms. As he's about to share, it all comes down to fixing the stubborn. First, a little bit about our guest. Originally from Caygeon, Ontario, Andy's life changed when he was 35, and the weight of emotions so many folks in agriculture carry became too much. He walked out of the barn on his family's farm, not only alive, but in many ways reborn. Over the past decade, he has been able to help farmers in over 21 states and 4 Canadian provinces. Andy's written 5 books, has a course taught in several universities, and has spoken across North America. Andy and his wife, Bernadette, live on a small farm in Iowa and have 3 sons, Huck, Colt, and Scout. You can follow him on Facebook at Farming with Family or subscribe to his YouTube channel. As always, be sure to visit our blog for show notes and links to resources cited in this episode. Welcome to Plow and Pencil, Andy.
How are you today? That was quite the intro. I mean, I don't know where you got that, but I wish I could just have you follow me around. I have a hard time explaining what I do for a living, so appreciate the good intro. You got what I do off my website or whatever, but that's fantastic.
Well, yeah. We're so glad to have you here. And I warned you that I like to start each podcast with a little bit of ag trivia. So I'm going to ask a question and see what answer you can come up with.
Sure.
What % of U.S. farms are family farms?
I think on our website we have that as 98%. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. You nailed it.
Okay, yeah, we just have that stats on our website, but I think these hippies in California, they think that the family farm is dead, but the truth is there's never been a generation where the term family farm is more relevant. I mean, these days it's not just one person farming, it's you got 2-3 cousins, 2-3 siblings farming together, because you've got to keep the family capital together. And just because we may have a corporation instead of a sole proprietorship, we have multiple family members involved in that operation. And it's just that we all have shares instead of owning the whole watermelon. We have slices of watermelon. And that's the challenge of our generation. If you want to pass over grandma's farm to your grandchildren, you got to learn how to share. And you've got to turn working with family from weakness to strength.
Well, that sets us up perfectly. And for those who have now listened to a few of our Plow and Pencil episodes, they're familiar with us starting up here at this 30,000 foot level. So, Andy, tell us, who is the Stubborn Farm family expert?
I just help stubborn farmers work better together. And what I do is help farm families stop being stubborn with each other and start being stubborn at the critical habits that makes the farm succeed.
Okay, now tell us, who is Andy Junkin?
I'm just a 7th generation farm boy from a little town called Caygeon, and I just hit the lottery as far as being able to marry the best woman ever. And I live to save family farms.
Okay, so if our listeners are anything like me, give us some geographical reference. Where's Caygeon?
Caygeon is on the edge of the world. Basically, it's north of Toronto, Ontario by about 2 hours. It is we have moose and bear go through cornfields. And so it's a lot like Appalachia. It's just on the edge of the Canadian wilderness. And basically, I went to University of Guelph, which is Western Ontario. And for the first 10 years of me doing what I do, I was based in Western Ontario, where all my friends were based out of. And it's just like Iowa. It's flatter than flat. It's I just was on the phone. It's $35,000 an acre land, corn, beans, a lot of cattle, dairy cattle, a lot of hogs, just like Iowa, except for the land's cheaper down here. So, yeah, there was no difference between here and there. So, and I married an American farm girl. She was a Michigan farm girl. It was her. She was going to be a nun until she couldn't decide whether to be a farmer or to be a nun. And our first date was her last. It was our first date was her first date, and it was my last first date. And we moved to Iowa here 5 years ago. So
Awesome. No better way to raise our families, right? Than out on the farm.
Our boys are wild. Yeah. And they're country boys for sure. So yeah, that's great.
So Andy, let's talk about the biggest change that you have seen in farming.
Well, I think the biggest change in technology in farming in the last 50 years is that, there's been a lot of changes like GPS or computers in agriculture. But I think the biggest change we don't realize is that the fewer farmers are dropping dead of heart attacks in their 60s than back in the 1960s. I mean, modern health sciences is a game changer in ways we haven't really thought through. I mean, that back in the 60s, when Dad was 60, he would retire because his hips were shot. And nowadays, if Dad has bad hips, he goes in for hip surgery. He's farming to his 80s or 90s, which is great if you want to farm till the day you die. And 2 weeks after, if you're 92, if you want to farm till you're 92, I'm all about making that happen. But we suddenly have 3 generations farming together instead of 1 generation farming at a time. And because this capital this equipment is so expensive, we have too many chiefs. We have too many cousins and siblings farming together as well, because you got to keep your family capital together. And we joke about it, but it's really no joke, and it's impacting farm profitability in a huge way.
So, Andy, we have some listeners of Plow and Pencil who aren't as involved in agriculture. So what kind of analogy would you make for those who aren't in agriculture to today's problem?
Well, I think the thing is we're butting heads and pulling the farm in different directions, and money slipping in the cracks. And I think like 100 years ago, we had a situation where marriage has changed a lot in 100 years. It used to be one person was dominant. And it's still the same way on a lot of family farms. We're having a hard time transitioning from a parent-child relationship to a professional working relationship. And really, it shouldn't matter who has more equity on paper in a safe. What matters is that the family is able, instead of butting heads and pulling the farm in different directions, as you get into power struggles, you got to get everybody on the same page and get everybody pulling the same direction. And so, we have a lot of problems right now with siblings and parents and children making decisions together. It's a big power struggle, and we got to get rid of the power struggle and make farming fun again.
So you're a marriage counselor for farm families, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's the way it is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what actually surprised me 15 years ago when I started doing this, I had a professional mediator that had been in this business for 30 years. He actually said, like, I personally know what it's like to wake up on Christmas morning without your family because of farm succession dilemmas, right? And so I take it really hard. Every client that don't get together for Christmas. And I had been doing this for a year, and there was just one client that everybody was still alive. I had to take a gun out of a suicidal farmer's hands. Everybody was fine and dandy, but were they going to get together for Christmas? I took that. I don't think so. And what I was surprised was with this guy that had been doing it for, I think, probably 20 years, he had a PhD in the topic. He says, like, over half of people that go to a marriage counselor, they get divorced within 4 years. And that's because everybody's going to the meeting wanting to basically get somebody to judge in their favor and say, okay, your partner's in the wrong, you're in the right. And when they're speaking to each other, they're not in the marriage counseling session, is that when their spouse is speaking to them about the problems that they have in their marriage, quite often the partners are thinking about a rebuttal instead of actually listening. And they're not really there looking for a solution to their marriage. They're looking for permission to basically exit. And sadly, that's the case it is with marriages. And as a result, we have so many divorces and so many people. We have 50% divorce rate, but we have a lot of couples that are really unhappy. And we don't really know what that number is. But it's pretty much the same rate here in family farms as well. And the truth is, nobody gets married to thinking that they're going to get divorced. Nobody goes home to farm with their family thinking they're going to have problems working with their families. And yet we are having problems working together as a team. And we got to get rid of that you're in the wrong and I'm in the right, and get rid of that I'm smarter than you attitude we have both in our marriages and also in our farming partnerships, and start making smarter decisions together as a family.
You offer a free master course on your Stubborn.farm website, which I love how you've described. It's a lot about self-reflection, right? And thinking about how can I start to make some changes. And for anyone who's interested after hearing our conversation today, I strongly suggest that they go check it out. But one thing when I was listening to it, Andy, that really stuck out to me, you referenced a saying that most people in agriculture have heard before. And even if it makes us cringe, it certainly is one that we have either experienced or watched take place. And you say it takes one generation to build a farm, one generation to grow the farm, and one generation to lose the farm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how can we break this cycle, Andy?
Well, I created the marriage. I created the masterclass because, just like priests and preachers created pre-marriage counseling before young couples got married, because they actually would marry couples before they got married, for instance. And the young couple would be so much in love and it'd be such a wonderful wedding ceremony. And then 10 years later, they'd be at odds with each other. And that's because they got into the relationship expecting it was going to be sunshine and unicorns. And I really think that we need to get realistic and identify potential landmines and really like a lot of these problems that married couples had were taboo topics that nobody would talk about openly in the community, like sex and financial issues or who's doing the dishes. Well, in the same way, as somebody that's saved family farms for the last 15 years, there's so many things that are common family topics, like how do we make decisions together as a family? How do we transition wisdom and make sure that the son and daughter take their performance from good to great? How do we deal with character flaws like anger and get anger management as a core strength of a family instead of a weakness? These are the potential landmines that anybody could anticipate, but it's a taboo topics we laugh about in the rural community, but we don't actually deal with. So that's what this course is all about, is helping you identify potential landmines in your relationship as you get started in your farming partnerships, as a son and daughter come home to the farm after college and careers, and they transition from parent-child to a professional working relationship. And that's what this master class is all about.
I think it's something that we at Hitchpin believe strongly in, Andy. And when Trevor, our founder, was first thinking about launching Hitchpin, one of the things that he was really thinking about is how do multi-generations be supported in a family operation, and what are some of the ways you can diversify your operation and bring in a new book of business and that sort of thing, and think outside the box, maybe from what your family traditionally focused on to some new ideas and some new business opportunities. And so one thing that you mentioned in your master course was the 9,000 hour rule. So tell our listeners a little bit more about that.
Well, I just think as a son, for a lot of farm families, the word succession is a dirty word. And simply put, quite often a family will have a conversation about succession planning, and everybody walks into that meeting expecting that to be a 2-hour meeting where they walk in and what they expect will happen. And they quickly get upset that their partners have completely different expectations. And, what should be an afternoon conversation turns into a 10-year family feud. And For a lot of parents, the word succession to them means early retirement or being pushed out of the operation. And that's not what mom and dad, there's a lot of patriarchs that they would want to die with their boots on. And simply put, a lot of succession planning these days, if you ask a lawyer or an accountant, truthfully, there may be a lot of people that are in their early 20s going to farm succession planning seminars. But the truth is that the majority of succession planning is happening when the sons or daughters are in their late 30s, early 40s, sometimes their 50s. Sometimes the kids, the grandkids are mature adults by the time that succession planning's happened. So instead of there being one generation farming together, we got 3 generations farming together. So it's kind of silly, I think, that you wouldn't go work for a software startup under the promise that, okay, if you work for us for 20 years and help us really increase the value of this business, we might give you some equity in the business, right? That wouldn't happen with a non-relative, but it happens too often that the sons and daughters have been there for 20 years and don't own the house they live in, don't own the truck they drive. And there's a lot of tension built up within the family because of that. The trust is just not there. And so what makes sense to me is that as a son and daughter come home to the farm, there's also the issue that there's a lot of that are on the farm because they don't know what else to do with their family. The thing is that there's a lot of sons and daughters just kind of fall into the farm, and they work on the farm for a couple of years thinking that they're just going to try to figure out what they want to be when they grow up. And suddenly life happens and they're in their 40s and they're living somebody else's dream. And they feel really trapped. And they feel a lot of obligation to carry on a family tradition, even though that's not really what they want. So what I suggest to every farm family is that as a son and daughter comes home to the farm, they work, at least the average farmer works about 3,000 hours a year. And so for 3 years, you have what I call the 9,000 hour rule. And you basically work for 3 years. And every month you sit down with your family and get a performance review and get feedback as to how can I take my performance from good to great. And you do that by talking about a new skill that you can be learning on the farm, such as bookkeeping, for instance. You can learn, you can take, you can look at the core family values of what made the farm successful and talk about some pet peeves that's not in accordance with what made the farm successful, so that, the successor takes the performance from good to great. So say, for instance, if a son and daughter sleeps in and is late to work, they wouldn't get away with that if they were non-relative. So every month, instead of being passive aggressive and waiting 5 years to farm succession meeting, and then dad mentioning that you slept in for the last 5 years, be proactive. Don't be passive aggressive. Be proactive. Identify core problems, and just take the successor's performance from good to great for the first 3 years that they're home. So they're not just a successor with potential, but they're realizing their full potential. And then the final thing is talk about character. And, whether you have a problem drinking or you have a problem with procrastination, bad habits kill family farms. And, if you can every month take one quality about your character and take it from good to great, you can improve how you guys work together, obviously, but more importantly, improve the probability of that farm still being ran by a competent manager 30 years down the road. And see, the root issue with the third generation curse is that any fool can give a son and daughter a tractor, but very few farmers are successful in teaching their kids how to make that tractor pay. And so if the first 3 years of the sons and daughters coming home, you take them from good to great, then you've got quality successors. You've transitioned to management first before you start talking about the transition of assets. And then after you put in 9,000 hours, you can decide for yourself, do I want to be a farmer or not? And then if you are actually serious and you've proven yourself as competent, potential manager, just like if you work for three years at a software company, then you can get a option plan for earning equity in the business, just the same as if you went to work at a different software company. And to me, that makes sense to have that conversation about how the sons and daughters can earn equity in the growth of the farm business over the next 20 years instead of going 20 years and it being a mystery. and everybody having different expectations, and it's just a big fight at the funeral.
Yeah, absolutely. So what your recommendation is to actually have that conversation after the 9,000 hours.
Absolutely.
And then start charting out a plan. So like you said, you're having that conversation early enough on, but after there's been some sweat equity, if you will.
Yeah. Prove that you want to be there. Prove that you're this tall to get on the ride. Now, it also provides your other siblings that may have an off-farm career. So say your sister is a school teacher and she sees the opportunity you're being given. She says, I would like to have the same opportunity. Then she puts in 9,000 hours. If she proves herself to be competent, then you have a discussion of how are we going to expand this farm so that it's able to support 3 families, right? So that you have the same opportunity to earn equity as I do. And don't have that conversation up front instead of 30 years down the road and having somebody that's not involved in the farm for the last 30 years jealous of the opportunity that the son and daughter that chose to stay at home had. Right, having these discussions when the sons and daughters in their early 20s instead of when they're in their 50s is how you ensure that the family will still get together for Christmas 50 years down the road on the farm.
So, Andy, a follow-up question to that. You mentioned earlier, sometimes you've got multiple generations who are living in houses that aren't even their own, for example. So, what do you think a good piece of real estate a young farmer should consider buying first? Is it equipment? Is it land? Is it, a house that's maybe on their operation? What do you recommend?
Well, I think the key concept is first of all, I think it's what's really important to the long-term success of a farm is knowing thyself, knowing what you want out of life and having a common vision by all the family members as to what you really want, having a crystal clear vision. Because quite often we have very vague visions, and as a result, we get dysfunctional families and dysfunctional farms because nobody's crystal clear as to what they actually want. Everybody's pulling the farm in different directions and butting heads over every decision. So the first piece, everybody's kind of shocked when I say this, but I really think that the first piece of land that a son and daughter should buy is, often accountants and lawyers are suggesting to farmers, you need to get your son into debt so that he, by buying a farm down the road, so that he or she has a fear of getting out of bed in the morning. And fear is not a way to really motivate somebody. And it's actually a way for somebody to feel trapped. And so I would actually feel that strongly, that after the 9,000 hours, if you decide that, to work on a farm in high school is a lot different than if in your career. And it's important to have a moment that it's okay for you to change your mind, right? But once you've decided this is what I want to do the rest of my life, I would suggest the first piece of land that a young farmer buys is the grave plot of that from a cemetery just down the road. Most family farms, there's a family plot that, it's about 5-10 miles down the road. Maybe the family even helps maintain that. It might be a little rural community. A cemetery. My family is Burry's Green. And why I'm suggesting that you buy your grave plot, not only for yourself, but for your entire family that you're going to be farming with, is not a morbid thing. It's a matter of, saying, okay, if we're going to be perpetually for eternity, 10 feet from each other on this piece of land, how do we get the system set up so that we can actually be 5 feet from each other at any point in time and not piss the hell out of each other? And there's a lot of families that I just had a meeting this morning with 2 brothers that have, I forced the 2 of them to be in a Zoom meeting and to be 5 feet from each other. They hadn't been 5 feet from each other in over a year. And that's because the 2 of them were not very well communicating. They couldn't be in the same room as each other, couldn't stand each other. And so that's because the 2 of them had different visions of the farm. They had different visions as to what was important with their lives. And so what I think is really important is that the family has a conversation about what success is and gets crystal clear as to what they're working towards, and using the context, okay, between now and the time that I'm going to, let's not talk about what success is theoretically. What do I actually want to do between now and the time that I'm going to be in this gravesite. And I don't know if I'm going to be, we don't know if it's going to happen 2 weeks from now, or if it's going to happen 20 years from now, or 50 years from now. We don't know. But what does success look like every day? What kind of environment do we want on this farm? And what do we want? Why do we farm? What's really important? And if you can get that crystal clear in everybody's mind what success is, and then all of the sacrifices that are necessary to farm, they won't be such big sacrifices because everybody's motivated towards the same goals. And all those distractions that come in life will go by the wayside. And I think in farming, if you can get everybody from button heads and pulling the farm in different directions to everybody on the same page working towards the same vision, it's amazing what you can accomplish. And I think as farmers, we're in the business of land stewardship.
Absolutely.
So for the whole family to have a crystal clear vision as to what you want to do with your life and the land that surrounds that where you're going to eventually become part of the soil, it's a whole fact of stewardship. What is it we want to do with our lives? And if you can actually capture that and almost get it to the point that you'd be willing to put a time capsule in where your cemetery plot's going to be and write it down on a just simple cue card. These are the things that are important to me. These are the 5 things or 3 things that are important to me. And you understand what's important to your mom and dad. It might be slightly different, but you respect how they're different. And your sister that farms with you, she might farm for different reasons, but you understand what those reasons are. You'll get rid of 3/4 of your family fights and everybody will have fun farming together.
So perhaps it's redefining what the word succession really means or what we have associated it to mean.
We got to define what success is rather than what we fear.
Yep. And as you shared earlier, succession really is success and change. And I think how you successfully navigate the changes both together and then when maybe you're the one who's left to make the decisions and to bring on the next generation, right?
Yeah. I mean, actually, succession, if you look at the word, if you split it up, there's the word success and then ION. And ION is actually a Greek word for change, right? I mean, action, traction, these type of things reflect change. That's actually a Greek word for change. And so what you got to do to define is clearly what the success is in your operation and how you're going to make changes within your operation towards those goals. And if you can clearly define that from the start, you can get rid of a lot of bickering. You can really have a successful farm as a result.
We'll be right back after this short break. Another happy tales from Hitchpin Sales. This one from Callahan in Kansas. Moving to a new rural community in Kansas and starting a small seed stock operation was certainly an adjustment. I knew access to hay and feed wasn't going to be an issue, but I just didn't know who to contact that put up hay in the area. Hitchpin gave me an easy solution to search for exactly what I needed and wanted. The app was very easy to use and to get a hold of the seller. The innovation and connection that Hitchpin offers is a game changer in the evolving agriculture landscape.
Okay, so let's dive down to the 5,000 foot level now. You asked a really poignant question in your master class, and you just referenced it a few minutes ago. Do you want this life, or is it someone else's dream? How do you advise someone to truly answer such a big question like that?
I would say, for me, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do that, but I would say take a jackknife and ask yourself, what would you cut your finger off for? So I had a farmer in Alabama, and he was about to get divorced, and he was about to lose the farm. Well, he was about to lose his relationship with his family because he got distracted by a lot of things in life, and he would not be willing to cut his finger off for. And and he wasn't willing to make a lot of sacrifices. And so, he actually got on the knife. For me, it says in my knife handle, it says, be the man. What does it say? Be the man you want your boys to become. That's what I have in my knife handle. And it really does drive me to do things differently day to day. For him, it was, how can I be the best farmer and husband in Alabama? And that completely changed around his marriage. And I think that for any farmer to really clearly define like a mantra that really drives your how you live your life, can really make every decision easier to make. And then if you actually have purchased that grave plot down the road, every time you come across, I mean, everybody comes across a crisis in life where they don't know what decisions to make. And if you have a place to go that you can actually make that decision and you actually know, okay, in the reflection of what do I want to accomplish, if you can actually go stand to that grave, because it's probably only a couple miles down the road from your farm, it will completely change the way you look at things, and it will truly make you successful. Yeah.
So let's assume that the answer is yes. This is the life that I want. It's not someone else's dream. It's my, well, it might be, but it's also my dream.
Yeah.
Where, or perhaps how do you start?
Well, I think it's a matter of, I mean, we can have a whole philosophical conversation about Jesus and what happens after life. But I mean, if you know where you're going to go, right, as far as the gravesite, then you can start looking at life as being finite. And often in farming, we treat time and money and resources and relationships as if it's infinite. And what I mean by that is that, you know, if we get stuck, I mean, we just have a tendency as farmers to work harder, work more long hours. I had a farmer that he was putting in 20-hour days. He was only sleeping 4 hours a night, and his wife made the comment like he had not set foot underneath the kitchen table in over a year. He didn't even have time to be at Christmas dinner. He had to go calve a cow, and they just, I mean, she was like, I love my husband, I love my in-laws, but you know, we were apparently working so that we could make ends meet while times are tight. Now money's good, and they just went and bought another tract. They just went and bought the farm next door. They didn't realize that, you know, this is not a life. And she left him, and I actually had to sit down with her at Burger King. And her father-in-law says, no, when she married my son, I told her farming is a 24-hour day job. And anyways, it was a matter of me convincing them that, you know, you guys are treating time as if it's infinite on your farm, and you're wasting a lot of time doing things that don't matter. And my question to them was, how do we focus 80% of our time on 20% of things that matter and start treating time as if it's infinite? Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like we think as farmers, we're the only ones with the work-life balance issues. And the truth is, like a lot of software entrepreneurs back in the 90s got divorced, and they lost their whole empires that they built because what's the sense of building a business that's successful if you don't have a family to enjoy it with? And so you go to a software conference nowadays, out in the coffee sessions, they don't want to talk about software codes. They want to talk about work-life balance. And I think that that's what we have to do in farming. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger, of all people, he says you got to sleep 6 hours a day. That leaves you 18 hours in a day. He says, if you got to sleep more than 6 hours, I figure you got to learn how to sleep faster. Because that gives you 18 hours in a day. And you show me how you spend those 18 hours, and I'll show you where you're going to be in 18 years. And I think the thing is that for my buddy that was actually became a client, we got him to, you know, chunk up his day and do something called time blocking, where he could spend more time with his family in a quality way. And instead of coming on home at night after the kids are in bed and falling asleep on the couch, you know, he got up earlier in the morning so he could be at home earlier, so he could spend more time on his knees playing with his kids. We got them some milkers on the weekends so that he could actually spend Sunday afternoons with his kids. His father actually got Saturday nights off. His father started motorcycling. His father actually got cancer and died a year later. His father said to me, you know, had we not done time blocking with you, I would have missed out on the best year of my life.
Wow.
And I think the thing is, in a family farm, if you can get your family talking about time as if it's money, it changes everything as far as how you work together as a team, what you prioritize. Being able to talk about how is dad or uncle Jim going to spend their 18 hours? How do you make sure that your mom and dad, your dad is actually spending more time with mom so they don't get divorced? Because that's a huge problem in agriculture we don't talk about. The empty nesters are the ones getting divorced, not the Generation Y, right? And that's because time management's a big issue, not just for the sons and daughters, but also the parents. And more importantly, what's the sense in raising trust fund kids? Because quite often successful farms, the kids want nothing to do with the farm because they've never seen their dads. They don't even know their dads, right? What's this all about? And if we can get the family to actually talk about time as if it's money. The first thing I do when I do a farm debt turnaround is get a family to look at time as money and get better discussing about prioritizing that time. And if you can do that for 2 months, I can turn around the farm dramatically because we get talking about priorities and how to invest things. And so we start talking about investing as far as doing farm debt turnarounds, as far as reassigning resources. If you can get a family talking about time for 2 months, talking about where the money goes and where's the best use, easily goes is 10 times easier once you've had that two months of conversation about time. And you can turn around a farm just like that. So if I was a succession planner, if I was a kid coming home to the farm, the first thing I would do is on Monday mornings, get the family discussing who's doing what for the week. And then every night at sunset, have a phone call planning as to how the plan's going to tweak tomorrow so that everybody knows what the right hand knows what the left hand's doing. And you get good as a family talking about how the prioritization of time and treat time as if it's money. And you'll have a quality life and a quality successful farm as a result.
I love that. It's
sorry for being a monologue here, but
no, it's so good. It's so good. And, Andy, I have a question for you too, because sometimes over the course of the time that families are farming together, there's a mutual desire for the farm to be successful. What happens if or when goals change? How do you navigate when dreams either, when they're different, when the next generation wants to take something in a new direction? Obviously you shared about talking about it and being very transparent with those dreams and desires, but what do you suggest that people can do to navigate that change that inevitably is going to come to their family farm?
Well, I often see succession planners, especially 15 years ago when I started mentoring under a lot of succession planners, they'd have books that thick as to what to do in different scenarios.
Yeah.
And essentially, I'd be sitting there, I'd be kind of like observing how these people did things. And basically, it created a whole lot of anxiety, like what to do in death, disability, divorce, or drugs. Like they had it all spelled out as to all the different problems. And I remember actually walking onto a farm, and they had paperwork that thick, and they pulled it out for me. And essentially, what had happened was one of the brothers had died, and the woman, she had a baby in her arms and a baby in her belly when her husband died. And 10 years later, they hadn't ever resolved a lot of those issues because they had never figured out how to make decisions together as a family. They had a huge, thick plan. They had the lawyer had actually flown me in to Montana to sort out that situation. And was simply put, the family sucked at making decisions together. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I can tell you for a fact is that no matter how much planning you do in advance, you're always going to have problems you can't anticipate. That's the only thing I can tell you for certain. And I think the thing is you got to get good at problem solving, how you problem solve itself. And I think that the better you can get at problem solving small little decisions, and get really good at weighing the pros and cons of little things, then the easier it is for handling bigger problems. So what I always make an analogy of is it's like building a fire. You start with a small kindling first, not the big logs. And quite often when, succession planning is just simply strategic planning. Mm-hmm. And the problem that we have is that a family that's bickering over simple production related decisions. I remember I walked in a family meeting and they were having a 20-minute argument before we even started our discussion about succession planning as to where the son-in-law was going to put a water bowl, and father and son-in-law were bickering about that. Well, I was like, how can we possibly talk about where the farm's going to be in 10 years' time? And they wanted to get the succession planning and not in two hours. I said, yes, you can do it in 2 hours, but you guys got to learn how to make small decisions first and learn the ways of pros and cons and get rid of this pissing contest that's going on between you. And if you can get a family from button heads and pulling farm in different directions to being able to sit down and make decisions together and get everybody pulling the same direction, farming's easy, right? We get rid of all that shenanigans by the wayside. And anything you really can do to improve quality decision making, that's going to skyrocket your profitability. So I would suggest that you got to get rid of the stubborn first before you, and as a result, anything that the world throws at you, you guys can handle as a family. And in succession planning, it's a snap.
Andy, could you explain what the Coming Home to the Farm program is?
I think we explained a little bit before, but the thing is, it's a free masterclass. You go to my website, Stubborn.farm. So you go to www.stubborn.farm. There's a free masterclass. It's on the website. It's called Farming with Your Stubborn Family. For several different farm organizations, we off-brand it as Coming Home to the Farm program. It's the same program, but essentially it's a 10-minute a day course where you sign up. It's free. I'll send you an email. It's like so simple. If you can open an email and click on a video, it's that simple. It's a 10-minute video. You watch. I ask you 3 thought-provoking questions. So it takes about 10 minutes a day to go through. You can do it while you're having your breakfast, and that's what it's meant to do. And then if you go through the course, I'll sit down with you at the end of the week, and then we'll talk about problem areas in your farm that you currently have and some practical ideas from the course, how to apply to your operation. And if you like the course, after you've sat down with me, I can sit down with your family. You can then say to the rest of your family, hey, I took this course. I think we actually could use some ideas from this. So you can either apply those ideas yourself, or if you want to get your whole family to go through the course, and then I can sit down with each individual, and then we can actually have a whole family afternoon conversation. And if you could take the course, everybody takes the course, I'll sit down for an hour for free. And simply put, we can just improve the odds of your family still farming together 30 years down the road. It's like a pre-marriage class before you marry the farm. And what I've actually found is that 15 years ago, I used to fly out as a mediator to the family farm. And I dealt with I've been the guy that's called in for the most dire situations. And what I actually found is that I didn't anticipate. We started offering this course. I anticipated it would just be farm kids coming home to the farm, taking this course. We've had a lot of sons and daughters where they're, up to their eyeballs in problems, and they're in their 30s or 40s or 50s. For them to take this course, it helps the family identify a couple areas that they can take how they work together from good to great. And it's really acts as a way to unbreak the log jam. And it's actually gotten rid of the need for a mediator altogether. And
it's
so I'm really happy about that I got rid of my whole profession. I really do think it's a game changer. And if we can help improve the odds of your family still farming together, fantastic. And what excites me is, a lot of families that are taking this course are good families, and just takes it how they work together from good to great, so that farming for the next 20 years is fun.
Give our listeners just a little teaser for if they were to go and sign up for the master course. What are 3 maybe little nuggets of wisdom that they're going to take away from going through that course and working with you, Andy?
Well, I'll just give you the goods of what I do. And simply put, this is an idea that anybody can copy, right? It's so simple, and I would love you all to copy it. I mean, the more farms that can do this, the better. It's just simply, if you can make one improvement basically every time I meet with your family, we sit down for 25 meetings, and everybody comes to the table with an idea to improve farm profit. It can't cost more than $1,000, but it's got to return at least $3,000. So what we do is everybody comes to the table with new ideas to improve the efficiency of the operation. And yes, the average meeting, we're making $10,000, which easily justifies the cost of my services. But more importantly, we get farm families to stop bickering with each other, stop pushing their agendas. They actually stop having that I'm smarter than you attitude, and start making smarter decisions together as a family as a result of that process. So you can take any family that's bickering And over 25 meetings, we get just take how you guys make decisions together from good to great to a whole sophisticated level. Then succession planning is a snap. Another two things is that we make one improvement to how you guys work together every meeting. It might be as simple as suggesting, hey, sunset, plan the next day, have a phone call, who's doing what. So when everybody gets out of bed in the morning, you at least have a plan of attack. I mean, no day goes as planned, but everybody, the right hand knows what the left hand is doing. Everybody, you get more out of your day as a result. And the third thing is just how to take your character. So every meeting, we talk about how to take your character from good to great for the family. So something like common, like temper. A lot of families have a temper, and they're
No,
I know.
not when we're working cattle. Not when
no. But the question is, how do you? I mean, something like how do you turn? Quite often we turn a mountain into a molehill, and that's like a character habit that can go from 0 to 60. And if you can change that habit from a weakness to a strength, and you can have 25 meetings. I meet with families every other week. So if you can make one character improvement every other week, and then you're held accountable for 6 months after to follow through with those character changes. If you can do that, if you can make one improvement every week, you can make one improvement at farm every time you meet, one improvement in farm efficiency, one improvement in how you work together, and one improvement to everybody's character. That's 3 meetings. You can meet for 25 times in the course of the year, every other week. That's 75 improvements to how your operation functions. And it'll be 300% different. Now, that's something you can do yourself. I've got a weight loss program that I had the book for years. And sometimes some folks need, somebody to help them get in the habits. And that's what I do. So that's the crux of my business. This is what I learned over 15 years. It's a simple process, but actually putting it into reality will improve the probability your family's still farming together 30 years down the road. And then succession planning after that is a snap, because you're able to sit down and make good decisions together as a family, and you've got a good quality successor that you've taken from good to great, and they've taken them from their potential to their full potential as a result of improving their character and how you guys work together as a family.
Enter code podcast when you sign up. That's PODCAST. And when you complete your first transaction, we'll waive your platform fee. Remember, it's free to sign up, it's free to list, and it's free to browse. Join the community of Hitchpin users today at hitchpin.com.
Hitchpin.com.
So I'm going to ask you another question, Andy. And,
Sure.
I think whether you're in farming or you're in any sort of business that you own and you've built, talking about succession isn't always comfortable and isn't always easy. Yeah. And I love that you're helping people to do that and normalize the conversation.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think a lot of us don't like to talk about is our own emotional health. And you just referenced it. And I kind of joked about, oh, no, that never happens. But the reality is it's something that I think only we can fix in ourselves. And so talk to our listeners a little bit about the importance of addressing emotional health, really, no matter what field you're in.
Well, I think on the family farm, like there's a reason why farmers are at the top 5 profession. I think there's next to the war veterans, they're the worst for farm suicides. And, we might have seminars blaming the markets and the weather, but the truth is 80% of the real issues, in my perspective, I mean, this is not scientific, but this is my experience of, I've been the guy that's dealt with the most dire situations in the last 15 years across North America. I've taken guns out of suicidal farmers' hands more times than I've got fingers. And that's why I've really been hell-bent to change how we do things, because the way we're doing succession planning, the way we're doing farm management is just completely broken. And what it comes down to is 80% of the time we're going home after working with our family, we just spent the day butting heads, and we're just really frustrated. We don't feel control of the farm. We don't feel control of our personal lives. And it's just killing us on so many different levels, the stress that's created. And, I think the thing is that it almost killed me. I don't want to get into it too much, but it almost killed me. And what I realized, I'm the last guy that I'd ever expect to be doing something like this, but I'm hell-bent to help as many farmers as I can. And I think that the root issue, we talk about mental health, but the real problem is emotional health. And mental health is a chemical imbalance in the brain. Mm-hmm. Emotional health is the way you look at life, the way your thoughts and feelings about things. And, if you have diabetes, go in for medication, right? Mm-hmm. If you have chemical imbalance in your brain, you got to go in and get medication. But we should be talking, just like with diabetes, we should talk about environmental factors such as diet and health. With mental health issues, we really got to start talking about emotional health and how it affects the stress is what's catalyzing families to have and farmers to be mentally unwell. And it's just like, you can't prevent a thought from entering your mind, but you can sure, it's like a light, like this lighter without any fuel in it, it's really have no danger, right? If it was full, it would be somewhat, the lighter was full, it would be somewhat of a danger. If it was beside a fuel tank, it'd be extremely dangerous. And the problem is that, how often do we go from 0 to 60 when turning a molehill into a mountain, right? Making things 10 times worse than they are. And the perspective is everything. And, a lot of psychology is based on like cognitive behavioral therapy. It's all based on ancient wisdom from the Greek philosophers, actually. And so if you can learn to look at life from a different perspective, it can really change the outcome. And I really think that what I've studied over the last 15 years is how can farmers take the wisdom of the ancient Stoics and how can we look at things in a different way and have emotional health on the family farm? And that's by some practical measures on changing how we work together as a family. And also just, me talking to a farmer one-on-one and changing a belief from an incorrect belief to a corrective belief, or suggesting a different way for you to have a character. How can we have different coping skills, or just simply a skill deficiency where you're frustrating yourself. You don't have the skills. You should be getting the skills so that you don't have the stress. And so that's how I think we'll save a lot of family farms. And that's how I have over the last 15 years saved hundreds of family farms.
I love that so much. And you can really see it in people who have put the work in and have had the hard conversations and have made a plan. I think so much of the emotional highs and lows come from the unknowns and things that we perceive are out of our control. So I love how you say, control what you can control. And sometimes that's getting a plan in place. That's walking through what the future of your farm and your legacy looks like. And so I love how those are all very closely intertwined, and you can just kind of see the weight off of the shoulders of the folks who have gone through the exercise of working with you and getting that plan really figured out.
Yeah. I mean, like even something so simple as a serenity prayer. I see farmers get so obsessed about things they cannot control. And the serenity prayer says, I'll screw this up, but God gave me the wisdom to identify the things I can control and the things I can't control, and the wisdom to know the difference. Yeah. And the thing is, it sounds so simple as two lines can completely change the whole perspective of a farmer. I mean, I had a farmer just in Minnesota. He was so obsessed with, there was estate planning done, and he was 100 acres short compared to his siblings. And he became so obsessed with that. And yet he was worth $10 million. And he was so obsessed at how he was shortchanged. And that became such an obsession. It was really affecting his business because he was depressed, and his management decisions as a result of that. And also, he was not talking to his father and his other siblings as well. And, simply 2 lines just completely changed his wife was about to divorce him. 2 lines changed his life. And that's simple. I could give you hundreds of examples of where something as simple as a phrase from a Stoic wisdom, such as from Seneca or Aristotle, can just completely change a man's perspective. And I think that perspective is what we got to change in order to have improve the probability of your family still farming together 30 years down the road.
Well, to continue with our aviation reference, Andy, let's drop the landing wheels.
Sure.
What is something that you wish everyone knew about family farm transitions?
I think the biggest thing I wish everybody knew is the two things is that it's going to be 30 years that you're going to be farming with your family. Quite often when kids come home to the farm, dad says, I'm going to farm for another 5 years. Well, BS. I mean, if he's a diehard farmer, he wants to farm to the day he dies. I mean, he secretly feels that he has to say that in order to, because his wife wants him to do more than just farm. Well, the question's got to be, how do we have a good balance between work and life balance, right? And how can I have fun farming, but also have fun beyond work, right? That's really what his wife wants. I mean, simply put, a lot of spouses, the farmers, they sell the farm and then they drive their wives crazy because they're adjusting the paintings, right? So the thing is that the whole idea about one generation farming at a time is old news. I mean, the simple put, but it's going to be 3 generations farming together. So you got to learn how to go from button heads, being able to be on the same page and everybody pulling the same direction. And the second thing is, if you have a family that's stubborn, what should be a 2-hour conversation is going to be a 10-year family feud. And quite often I see family members, they're so stubborn with each other. It's like cavemen sitting around the kitchen table and expecting dad to carve up the pie. And either everybody's reaching for the pie and pie gets on everybody's face, or somebody's got the piece of pie underneath their arm and they're running down the road and there's a mob chasing after them. And the thing is that we got to talk about what made the farm successful and make sure, like, what's the recipe for success, and make sure that continues on for generations. And we got to get rid of the stubborn, and we got to learn table manners instead of being cavemen around the kitchen table reaching for the scraps. We got to learn how to work together, how we can bake more pies so that generations can still be farming down the road. And that's by turning stubborn from a weakness to a strength. And that's by stop being stubborn with each other and start being stubborn with the critical habits that make a farm successful.
How would those kiddos of yours describe Andy today?
My boys?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good question. I just live to save family farms. That's just, I'm in the business of improving the odds of farmers working together 30 years down the road. So they know that their daddy, I get up at 4 o'clock every morning and I spend the first 2 hours reading whatever I have to read in order to get better at what I do. And I try to not just talk the talk, but walk the walk and living a balanced work-life balance. I try to shut it down at night at 5 o'clock, and so I can spend a couple hours with my kids and really have a good work-life balance as well. But yeah, I live to save family farms, and I'm very passionate about it.
Well, I know that they can be incredibly proud to call you dad. Well, Andy, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today for Plow and Pencil. And I want to encourage our listeners to join your community of success and go to Stubborn.farm. Make sure that you're looking for Andy's book, Bulletproof Your Farm, and sign up for that masterclass and get some more nuggets of wisdom from Andy.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And go to, and the thing is that if anybody, this is the first time we met, but if anybody wants to go a deep dive about a certain topic, just throw out the topic subjects and, maybe we can visit back later on this year. And
I would love that. Yes. Yeah, I want to dive deeper into it. And, the thing
farms together.
That's exactly right. That's right. Hitchpin and Andy, we're coming to help you. And
I love your company's mission. So yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you. We laugh because, it's not uncommon for the younger generations to be more technologically open to trying some new marketplaces and some new technology. And so we're really excited when family farms are working together and you can have the young teaching the old just with the old teaching the young. So it's all wheels going in the same direction, right?
Absolutely.